Welcome to the Be Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. Welcome to another episode of the She's Bold podcast. By the time you listen to this, I will be in Morocco. I'm heading there for a couple of weeks to research a future women-only tour that I'll be leading. And I haven't yet been to Morocco, and I'm so excited to explore this beautiful country. The more I research and the more photos I look at, the more excited I get. As you may know, I just returned from India, so it's been a bit of a rough week as I've been getting over jet lag, and at the same time, I've been packing for this next trip. I think I've mostly shaken off the jet lag and really just in time because I'm literally just about to head to the airport. I will be posting photos of Morocco shortly, but in the meantime, I'm actually still working through my India photos. So if we're not yet friends on Facebook, please send me a friend request there and also follow me on Instagram at Wandergal, and you'll see some beautiful images from my trip to Gujarat and South India. Okay, so the She's Bold podcast. Thank you so much for being here today. This is where I feature long-form, in-person, one-on-one conversations with women who epitomize being bold. These are women from all walks of life, and they have a wide range of ages and backgrounds. Now, they are living life on their own terms, and really the bottom line is they have inspirational stories to share. Today's conversation is with Dierdre Wolownick. And while you may not recognize her name, you likely will recognize the name of her son, Alex Honnold. Now, in the off chance you don't know who Alex is, he's the guy who free soloed up El Capitan, and he was featured in the movie Free Solo. I won't go into really any details about that, but if you haven't already, you must see this Oscar-winning movie, Free Solo. And Deirdre is in the movie, by the way. So yeah, Deirdre is Alex's mom. And that fact might be interesting right there. But Deirdre has her own interesting story to share. Very interesting. She's a woman who speaks multiple languages. And she only speaks French to her children, her two children. Because she's passionate about music and she saw the need for it in her hometown, she founded an orchestra, and that was in West Sacramento, California. So she's a woman who really just takes things into her own hands. She began running when she was in her mid-50s after telling herself all her life that she was not a runner. Sound familiar? She's the author of numerous books, with another one coming out in May called The Sharp End of Life, A Mother's Story. And if all that wasn't inspirational enough, she began climbing when she was 57 years old so that she could better understand what it was that her son was doing. Eventually, Alex led her up El Capitan after he did his own free solo up. So he led her up, and Deirdre was 66 at the time. She has a lot more to do, and she figures she'll need to live to at least 125 to accomplish these many things. And no doubt she is on a trajectory to do just that, to live to 125 and to accomplish all those other great things. Deirdre is a fascinating woman. She really lives by her own rules. And I mean, how many parents do you know that only speak to their children in a foreign language? And what living by your own rules means is that you can accomplish a great many things. And she really, really has done that. I know you're going to be very inspired by this conversation with Dierdre Wolownick. So we just finished watching the IMAX version of Free Solo. I had seen the movie previously, but I didn't see it on IMAX. And it was pretty cool. It was nice to be, on one hand, it was kind of nice to be in an empty theater. It's always nice to be in an empty theater, but it's also fun to watch it when there's a big group of people because you get the reaction to it. How many times have you seen it?
Oh, 6 or 7 or so.
Only 6 or 7, of course. And you had mentioned to me previously that each time you watch it, you get a little something different out of it. Was there something in particular this time that you connected with or that you got out of it?
No detail in particular, just I find it's an emotional roller coaster.
Mm. Yeah. Even for you.
Even for me, I'm the mom.
Yeah, but you know
especially for me.
But you know how it ends.
Everybody in the theater knows how it ends. Yeah, that doesn't stop them from gripping their chairs.
Yeah.
I like to watch the audience when there is a pile of people. The last time I was there, straight down the row, I was watching a woman. She watched the entire movie with her hand over her face. She was like gripped the entire time, but she watched it.
Yeah, I had adrenaline rushes a couple times.
Yeah.
I just felt it. And that is such a weird thing. I mean, sure, we go to scary movies and they are powerful, and we go to scary movies to be scared. But this is so real life.
Right. I was just about to say those scary movies are fiction. You know, somebody invented it and created it, and you know they're fine. This is real life.
Yeah, it is.
That's my son.
Yeah. What is emotional about it for you?
You just watched the movie. You know the answer to that.
Well, no, I don't, because I'm not his mom. But is it the unbelievable feat when he's up there, climbing, free solo climbing, and the potential of his death, or is
no?
There,
no, it's not the potential
else?
of the death. I know he's here with us. No, it's just seeing what a wonderful person, athlete, master of amazing feats he is. People rarely ever get to see that about their kids, about anybody, in fact, but especially when it's your own. He did something that probably nobody else will ever do.
So it's emotional because there's some
just
pride.
Amazing.
There's pride in there.
Well,
yeah.
It's not pride. Well, pride is a negative word. It has a lot of negative connotations. Don't be proud. But yeah, it's a kind of a pride that's kind of. It's hard to put into words. Really
well,
is.
I guess where I'm going with it is your emotional level will be different from mine because you are the mom,
right?
And I think that I would think, and maybe it's just projecting, and I don't have a negative connotation about it, that there is pride. Like,
oh yeah, a lot of pride for sure.
That's my kid.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Oh, for sure. That kind of pride, absolutely, off the charts.
Mm-hmm. He's a good guy.
He's amazing. Yeah.
One of the things that I came away with after watching it a second time, the first time I watched it, and I even shared this with you in an email, or I think it got shared with you in an email, maybe a little accidentally, that I immediately said I immediately apologized for because I wasn't sure how you would take it. But I said, I kind of got the sense that maybe he was a little bit on the spectrum, Alex.
Definitely. When he was younger, and he's taught himself out of it.
Like he says in the movie,
taught himself to hug.
Yeah.
I tried to hug him all of his childhood, and he refused, absolutely refused. He would get violent, rather than let me hug him. But when it was his own realization, he saw that, that's what people do. Okay, like eating vegetables. He was the worst eater in the world. He never ate a vegetable until he was like a teenager. The only vegetable he ever ate was raw carrots, and there was no coercing. Not allowed, but I mean. I could make him sit there and eat one pea, and then he would throw it up.
You know what? I was like that with green beans.
Okay, all right. Well, green beans too.
I'd go to the bathroom and throw them up.
Throw it up. Yeah. See, I think that's a consistency thing, and I think that goes with a lot of mental. What would you call a spectra? Yeah, for sure, a little touch of that, but he taught himself out of it, and that's to his great credit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, what I came away with, no, I didn't want to harp on that personally. I wasn't bringing it up for that reason, but I wanted to say that in watching it a second time, I got a little bit different sense of it. And I don't know if it's because now that I've spoken to you and think you're so wonderful and have read more about Alex and have read more about you, is that I went into it and I thought, okay, well, I think there's of course there is a little bit of film manipulation here, just the way that they've pieced it together.
For sure. And storytelling, cinematographic storytelling.
It is. Mm-hmm. And they've really played upon that. And there are things that he says that certainly just kind of solidify that. And
for sure.
So I don't think we're totally off the mark. I don't think the storytellers were totally off the mark. But in watching it a second time, I was certainly just endeared by the whole project and by him and by Sonny, and just everything is, she's just such a sweetheart.
Yes.
So that's my
for sure.
My takeaway is I fell in love with the movie even more so, the second time around.
And the sixth and seventh time,
I'll keep it
even
in mind,
more so.
Because believe me, when it comes out on streaming, I'll be watching it a lot more often. So one thing that struck me is, what is something that you would hope, because I had a little bit of a change watching it a second time around. Is there something that you wish had either been conveyed or that viewers would have understood better that wasn't maybe portrayed, and nothing, nothing against the filmmakers, but, well, just like you said, well, I did try to hug him, but, and that wasn't conveyed in the movie because it was his perspective. It was coming from his perspective.
Absolutely. And Alex, of course, never really knew my family. He knew his grandparents, my parents, but only until he was like preteen, maybe even before that, because they lived on the East Coast and we lived on the West Coast, and my mother couldn't travel easily. She was handicapped, and so he never really knew them. So when he says my family and the whole family, he's only talking about the Honnold family.
And that was established that your ex-husband,
right,
but who's now deceased, he was Asperger's. Is that right?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. That's my own
your own
conclusion.
Assessment.
Yeah, right. From everything I know now, I didn't know anything about that then. I'd never heard of it back then when I met him, but now that's definitely my conclusion. It's a pretty classic case.
Right. So is there anything else that you think like, oh gosh, that...
I'll keep mulling that one over.
Okay, that's fine. We can come back to that.
Right.
That's totally fine. Maybe next podcast, next episode, we can chat about that. We'll just, pass that along. So one of the things, that I like to do, and certainly, we could talk about the film, but that's not what I'm here to do.
Right.
And thank you so much for having me in your home
Sure.
here too. I really appreciate it. I'm delighted to meet you in person after so many email exchanges that we've had. But what I do like to do is chat about what a person is involved in right now. And I know that you have two very adventurous kids, and we'll get into that.
Yes, I do.
But the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, or there was some kind of a chicken and egg going on there because you found adventure at some point, and I know even more adventure more recently. So what is it that you're working on? You've got a book that's coming out.
Yeah, my book comes out this May,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a big adventure right there. I'm a little handicapped right now because I had surgery on my foot. So I'll be down for a few months still, so I won't be doing the normal, for a long time. I will be out promoting the book.
And the book is Sharp End of Life.
The Sharp End of Life.
Mm-hmm.
The sharp end, of course, is a climbing term. And the book...
Well, you see, I didn't know that.
Oh, okay.
So tell me what that is.
Well, when climbers climb, there's usually two of them, unless you're free soloing, which is very rare. And one person leads the climb. He goes up first, he puts in the protection, and he anchors the rope to that protection. So if he falls, the leader falls, he just dangles from the most recent piece of protection.
And the protection is the anchor, what's that piece of gear that goes in there?
It depends on the type of climbing you're doing, but it could be bolts that are already in the rock, or it could be protection like molly bolt kind of things that the climber puts into a little crack or puts around a horn of rock or something, and then that holds the rope. Mm-hmm. So the person leading, if they fall 2 times as far as they are from their last piece of protection, the distance upward and the distance downward,
right.
So that's a harder fall than like the follower. Follower just dangles on the rope if they fall, the second person. So the top end of the rope, the leading end, is called the sharp end.
I see. Okay.
And of course, my book, it's the sharp end of life. My entire life has been at the sharp end. So
in what way?
Well, you have to read the book.
well, I will eventually when it comes out. I promise you that I will.
Yeah, I had a rough childhood. I had a horrible marriage. It's just been hard, really hard. The sharp end, for sure.
Yeah, but look at you now.
And yeah, look at me now.
So what are your most recent accomplishments? I know you started, like me, we discussed this before, that I didn't start running until I was in my mid-40s, ran my first marathon at 50.
Yes, that's quite extraordinary.
Well, you're quite extraordinary as well. What's been your...
Well, there are different kinds of accomplishments in my life. I mean, I was always very quiet and an at-home person because I was my mother's arms and legs. She was handicapped, and so I had to, listen for her call all the time, and just, so I learned to draw, I learned to paint, I learned to play the piano, and
what was her handicap?
She had polio, lower body polio. So she could get around, on a flat, smooth surface, it was fine. But she couldn't walk on an uneven surface, couldn't do stairs, things like that. Unfortunately, we lived in New York City, so everything was stairs and uneven surfaces everywhere. So I got, quite adept at various things that I could do at home.
Were you an only child?
No, I had an older brother, but I was the girl.
Uh-huh. So you were the primary
caretaker. In that I was, yes, I was. And so one of my greatest accomplishments in my own mind was my orchestra. I created, founded, and conducted the West Sacramento Community Orchestra. But this is 40 years into my life, something like that. But I'd been working towards it for a long. I had always wanted to conduct an orchestra. I played many instruments, and piano was my main instrument. Flute would be my second, and I play several others. And so I've played in a lot of groups and orchestras and things like that, which is always a lot of fun. Very fulfilling.
So were you studying music then in New York, like through your school years?
I took piano lessons until 8th grade. And at that point, I was at a Catholic school and took from the nuns. And at that point, they no longer had anything to teach me. I was way beyond them. But I grew up after World War II in a Polish Catholic environment in a very international neighborhood of New York City, Jackson Heights. An immigrant neighborhood, basically. Mm-hmm. They were all from all over the world, And so we didn't have options, When the nuns had no more to teach me, that was it for music. My parents couldn't afford piano lessons or anything else, So I just taught myself after that.
Did you have a piano at home?
Oh, yeah. Piano was my salvation. The piano was my only emotional outlet. I lived at home. I took care of my mother, and I did all the chores, and I did all the shopping, and I played the piano.
And you sat and played.
Right. It was my only emotional outlet. So when we moved to West Sacramento, after we lived in Japan for 4 years before that, and both of us taught English.
Both of you, meaning you?
My husband and I.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Skipped ahead.
That part went without saying.
Right. Because I was like, well, wait, your family in New York?
Sorry.
No.
Yeah. My husband and I moved to Japan where we taught English at a university there for 4 years. My daughter was born there. My son missed being born there by 1 month. But we moved to West Sacramento after that, and I created the orchestra. I discovered there was nothing in West Sacramento to speak of. There was no culture. There were no stores. There was nothing. It was basically just a suburb of Sacramento, with just houses.
What makes a person want to create an orchestra?
Well, I had played in many groups, many organizations, music groups. I hate to keep calling them all orchestras. They weren't all orchestras, but various groups, chamber groups, performance groups, all over. And it's immensely gratifying. There are no words for that experience. There probably are, but I haven't found them yet. So I moved there. Well, I had no life at that point. I was just mom.
In Sacramento? In
West Sacramento. I was just mom. That was my entire life. And I was trying to keep my writing moving along a little bit. I'm also a writer, full-time writer. I wasn't full-time then. And a teacher, I've taught at every teaching type of venue in Sacramento. I think I kept myself supremely busy because I was in a dwindling marriage. We had no relationship, basically. And so I was just alone with the 2 kids in West Sacramento. There's nobody in West Sacramento all day long. It's like a ghost town. And I just longed for some cultural outlet of some sort. And this is my chance. There was nothing there. I could create whatever I wanted.
You saw it as a big open canvas.
Oh, yes, exactly. That's exactly it. A big open canvas, and I could paint whatever I wanted. And so I approached it wasn't technically a city at that point. It was just an unincorporated area. And so I approached whoever they were, the Chamber of Commerce, I guess. And with this idea of, what would you think of having an orchestra right here in town? And they thought it was great. And so they helped me every way they could.
Wow.
And I was a writer, so I approached all the newspapers. We were in all the newspapers, all the little journals, all the little magazines all around, And then...
Did you also play in the orchestra? Or
I conducted.
You conducted?
I conducted, yeah. Can't do both. You can, technically, but I wasn't about to. So, you can do that if you play the violin. Violin players are often the conductor as well. But not from the flute chair. You can't. So, I was a conductor. I was the chief cook and bottle washer. I organized all the concerts. I found the venues. I got press coverage about it, because I could do all those things. And we kind of did that for 4 years. We played all over the region for 4 years.
Is it still going?
It's still going. It's more or less what musicians now call a rehearsal orchestra. They play together. They rehearse every week like we did. They play twice a year, I guess. They have a Christmas concert and a July 4th concert at the city hall there in town. They apparently are not into promoting, like I was. But yeah, I went to their Christmas concert this past Christmas. It was quite nice.
So when I came to your home today, as I was walking up, you were playing piano. You play every day?
I try to, and especially now. It's it's kind of a down period right now.
Yeah,
when
with
I'm, with my foot. Yeah, I can't go running. I can't go climbing. I can't walk to the store. I can't do anything. So
again, it's your outlet.
It's my outlet. Yes, yes. It's my salvation. Piano has always been my salvation.
The other thing that happened when I first arrived is you took a phone call from your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And
oh, right. I have to call her back.
Don't forget.
No.
But you were speaking French to her.
Yeah.
And I had forgotten in the film, I was reminded today when we were watching that when your kids grew up, do you only speak French with them?
Yes.
And then they learned English did they learn English from their dad?
Yeah.
Oh,
and their grandparents and their cousins and their aunts and uncles and everybody in the world spoke English. Yeah.
Yeah.
Until Stacia was 2, we lived in Japan. So she got 33% from Charlie, English, 33% from me, French, and the rest of the world was Japanese.
And a little Japanese.
So when we moved back here, when she was 2, she was trilingual. But that didn't last long. When you're 2, you don't remember much.
Yeah.
Then that went
away. Do you
away.
speak Japanese also?
I speak a lot of languages, yeah.
What else do you speak?
Fluently French, Spanish, Italian, and of course English. We'll count that one. French, Spanish, Italian are fluent. My Japanese was fluent when we lived there in like day-to-day Japanese. Anything deeper than that, like I couldn't talk politics, I couldn't talk about the electrician, coming out. Any day-to-day Japanese, mom Japanese, I was fluent. I also speak enough Polish to get by, enough German to get by, enough, Greek to get by. But I grew up, like I said, in a neighborhood where every house was a different language.
Is that why you knew so many languages or know them?
Why I was exposed to them and they were normal to me. And then I also have a natural talent, bent, whatever, for language.
Well, I would imagine there's got to be something else there because because you have this natural bent towards it. Because a lot of people grow up in immigrant neighborhoods and they don't.
Right.
They only speak one language.
So I definitely also have that, pushing me to explore the languages more. And I always did. Even when I was a little kid, like 4 or 5, I remember, My grandmother, she died when I was 3, but we used to play cards together, and she only spoke Polish. So, yeah, that was normal to me. It was always normal to me all my life until I moved to California, where everybody speaks English, period. That was horrible to me.
Do you seek out people who speak other languages just to keep it fresh?
I do, yeah, but it's hard here in California.
Which is strange because I thought California was a little bit more diverse. But maybe
it is
that's
very
just the
diverse.
big cities.
It is very diverse, but they keep to themselves. The speakers of Armenian hang out with speakers of Armenian, and it's diverse in numbers, but it's not a multicultural place at all. It's very, very monocultural, monolingual, everything here, California. I was very surprised by that. But, I grew up in the most multicultural place in the world. So
in Jackson Heights.
Jackson Heights, yeah. So my viewpoint is kind of skewed, I guess.
Yeah.
I thought everybody grew up that way until I left.
So your big project, you felt like I got you a little sidetracked there.
A little bit, yeah.
So
that was my biggest accomplishment for a long time was the orchestra, and I've done other things too. Being published over and over, that's very gratifying.
Yeah. You've got some great books on your bookshelf.
Right. And while we lived in West Sacramento, also I published my first book, Sacramento with Kids, and that was very gratifying. It got me out into the community. It got me contacts everywhere. In every walk of life in the greater Sacramento region, and it was just an interesting entree into life here, and it was also an entree into the world of climbing because I had to take my kids to everything to try it out for Sacramento with Kids. It was a guidebook for families or scouts or whatever, people with children.
Is that how your kids got into climbing?
Well, the first time we ever went climbing, I didn't know climbing was a sport. Who ever heard of that? 30 years ago, who ever heard of that? And so I found out about this place called the Rocknasium in Davis, which is about 30 minutes from here. And found out about this Rocknasium, and I was thinking, oh, God, what should I do? I can't take Alex there, because all he ever wanted to do was climb. Anything. Furniture, shower bars, trees, things you would never imagine you could climb on. That's where I always found my baby, So I knew in my heart of hearts that I couldn't take him there. It would be way too dangerous. And I didn't know really what a gym looked like, a climbing gym looked like. I had no idea. But I couldn't take his sister and not him. I wanted their opinions for the book. And so I agonized over that for many, many months. And then finally I just bit the bullet. I said, okay, we're going to go. I'm going to make a list of questions. We'll be there for 3 minutes. I'll ask them my questions real fast and we'll leave. Well, that's not how it turned out.
3 hours later.
That's not how it turned out. Right. So we walked in and I was aghast. The place was nothing but huge walls covered in colorful handholds and people on these walls hanging at every, it was horrible from a mom's point of view, with 2 little kids. Alex was 5 at that point. And we walked in and I gave my 2 babies there were 2 young men who ran the gym, and I gave one of them my babies and said, take care of them. And he said, oh, don't worry, we do this all the time. And I remember thinking, you do not. You've never seen a kid like Alex. And I don't think they ever had. And I was talking to the other young men who, the manager, I guess they were both owners. And I'll never forget that. We're talking to him, asking him my quick list of questions so we could get out of there as fast as possible. And all of a sudden, I realized silence. The whole gym had gone quiet. There's music playing, people are talking, they're shouting commands to each other. There's a lot of noise in a gym. All of a sudden, everything had gone quiet. And I knew it had something to do with my son. And so I turned around, and there was my 5-year-old. He was a skinny, scrawny little boy. He was tiny. He looked like a chicken. He was 40 feet off the floor, about to top out, what they call, when you reach the top of the climb, you top out. I didn't know that then. He was about to top out, and the whole gym, everybody in the gym was watching him. Apparently, he climbed with such grace and aplomb. They all stopped what they were doing, and the other young man who was allegedly taking care of my children, he was like gazing up at him. He said, wow, he's really good. So from the very beginning, he was exceptional at that. And he'll poo-poo that. He'll just say, I was never a really good climber. But everybody else knows, But then he didn't start climbing again until he was like 10 or 11.
So the books starting with the Sacramento
with
kids,
and then San Jose with kids, same kind of book. And then I did a book on the English language, which was born out of my experience of teaching. I've taught 5 different foreign languages, but the one I probably taught the most, 2 I guess I taught the most, was French and English as a foreign language. And my book on the English language called English with Ease was born out of that. And it's all the stuff that I knew worked, in my English classes. And on and on.
Yeah. And then more recently, talk about your running and what brought you to running. And then even though your kids had been climbing for so long, that is a relatively recent thing for you too.
10 years, 10 years. Yeah, the running was sort of by accident. I knew I couldn't run because I'm always short of breath.
Quote unquote knew.
Right, I knew, quote unquote, right, exactly. I was always short of breath. I grew up in a house for 25 years. I lived there with them, my parents. That was the way back then, The girl lived at home until some man came and took her away, which didn't wind up that way. But I lived 25 years in a cloud of cigar and cigarette smoke, and that takes its toll. I was always short of breath. Anything more strenuous than sitting, I was always huffing and puffing. So I knew, somebody like that can't go running. This is absurd. Nonetheless, we had this huge dog. We had a Malamute. This is back after my father just died. My father-in-law had just died. Alex had just had a horrible accident. He had almost died. My husband had just died. Ex-husband. I was redoing 5 houses at once. This is like absurd to talk about. Nobody possibly do these things. But I was being executor of my ex-husband's estate because there was nobody else to do it. I was teaching more than full-time hours, and I was dealing with these 5 houses, 3 on the East Coast and 2 on the West Coast.
From these people who had passed away,
yeah,
you mean? Okay.
Yeah.
So you were in charge of the
estate. It sounds absurd, and it was. And so I didn't have a moment to myself ever. When I came home from work, school, teaching college, I would immediately go down the office here and start doing the estate work. And that's all I did, 7 days a week. If I wasn't teaching, I just did estate work and learning as I went. At one point, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whatever it was at night, I couldn't see any longer. I would take the dog for a walk. A Malamute. Big, long legs, powerful, built to pull, you know what a Malamute is?
Yeah.
And so I would go out with the dog, and her long legs, I would wind up trotting along with her, And I'd come home and tell, yo, Alex, I just ran a half a mile. So Alex's take on things is different. Alex is, as he mentioned in the film many times, he's goal-driven and accomplishment-oriented. And he probably gets a lot of that from me. He did not get that from his father. And so I came in once, I said, Alex, this is a big news for me because of my lung condition and how I always had been. I just ran a mile with Juno. Juno was the dog. And he didn't miss a beat. He said, well, if you could do a mile, you could do a mile and a half. And then when I did a mile and a half, well, you could do two, and on we went. And then I heard about the Run to Feed the Hungry for Thanksgiving here in Sacramento. I thought it sounded like a great thing to do for people, Run to Feed the Hungry. What a great cause. And doing something I enjoy anyway, And then I started leaving the dog at home because she stopped all the time. I wanted to keep running. And I'm thinking, Run to Feed the Hungry. It's a 10K, 6 miles. I mean, back then, 6 miles. The idea of running 1 mile was wild to me, but 6 miles, I knew I wouldn't finish. I knew. Mm-hmm. But it was a good cause. I'd gladly give them my money. I'd go, I'd see what an organized run was like, and I'd come home happy. That's not what happened. I did come home happy, but not for those reasons. But I'll let you read the book for the rest of that story.
Oh, gosh, you can't leave us a cliffhanger like that.
Okay, well, Alex went with me to Alex had just gotten back. The night before the run, he got back from Europe. He was competing for climbing in Spain. And so he said, well, sign me up. I said, are you crazy? You're going to be coming back the night before? You're going to be exhausted from Europe, a 12-hour flight. No, I'll be okay. Sign me up. So I signed him up. The morning of, I went, opened his door. You okay to go? Yeah, he was still asleep. Yeah, sure. So he went with me, and it was the best thing in the world. He, I don't know if you know anything about our Run to Feed the Hungry, but it's the biggest Thanksgiving run in the country, I think. It's like 20,000 people do this race. And, the TV's there, radio's there. It's amazing. They have entertainers all on the course. It's amazing. I didn't know that until I did it. But so we got there and I'm looking around all these 20,000 people and they're all in their spandex and their costumes and their running gear. And I'm in my blue jeans and my flannel shirt and my sweatshirt. I knew nothing about running. All I knew was I trotted along with the dog. And so I ran with Alex. And Alex, you know what a kind of an athlete my son is. So he ran along beside me, ran circles around me. He'd run up on the lawns on both sides of us, run backwards in front of me, and telling me about his trip to Spain.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah, so I just listened to his trip to Spain all the way, and I got worn out. I had to stop at the porta potties, and I had to stop and rest my thighs, and he stopped with me and carried my sweatshirt, and, it just talked, and that changed my life. I didn't think I was going to finish until I could see the finish line. I said, holy, there it is.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. And that's how I became a runner.
But you've gone on to do marathons
to do marathons the next year after that. Yeah.
So what's the change? And I think it's really important for people to hear this because so often we make up stories about ourselves, about what we can and we can't do. And you had a story for yourself of why...
I knew I couldn't run.
Right, that you couldn't run. And I did the same thing with myself because I would run for 2 minutes up the block or 2 blocks, and I would be so out of breath.
Right.
And I thought that it was because I wasn't a runner.
Right.
Well, I later realized that's just
it's because you weren't trained.
Yes,
that's
but
it.
Also I still run 2 blocks and I'm out of breath for the first 2 minutes. It's your It's your body. It's your
changing
lungs,
gears.
It's your lungs and your heart kind of catching up with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't know that, and I didn't have anybody to tell me otherwise.
Exactly.
I just didn't know. I didn't do any research into it. But we tell ourselves these stories. Just as you did, and was it incremental for you? Did you
absolutely?
Was it just like Alex said? If you can run a mile, you can run a mile and a half.
That's
if you
right.
can run a mile and a half, you could do 2 miles.
I started making my little charts and grids and stuff. And this week I would do this many miles. This week I would do a quarter mile plus, and and all that. And it was an addictive kind of transformation. I had no idea I could do this. Then when I discovered I could do it at least a little bit, I wanted to keep pushing it and keep pushing it. And see where the limit was. Because obviously I wasn't aware of my limits, And we really don't have limits. They're just the point of the whole thing. We really don't have limits unless we accept them.
Unless we accept them, what do you mean? Oh, I see what you mean. You're saying unless we make them up.
Exactly. If you say, oh, I can't XYZ. Well, if you believe you can't, you can't. Mm-hmm. And if you believe you can, you can. It's really as simple as that. I never in my wildest imaginings ever imagined climbing a rock wall. How ridiculous is that for a grown woman, a teacher, a mom? But
how did you start climbing?
But first I have to go backtrack. My son is the reason I got through the first race. That was him. But my daughter is a runner. She's an
ultramarathoner.
She's an ultramarathoner, and she's always been really, really excited about it and jazzed about it, and it's kind of contagious,
I'd love to have her on the podcast, just for the record.
Yes, you should. You should. She's an she's an inspiring individual. She really is, and she inspired me. And so I've seen her, over the years doing these runs, and I was doing my 6-mile runs and thinking that was way cool, And then I drove her to her first marathon. I didn't even know what a marathon was. I had no clue. I was still wearing jeans when I went running. I was so untrained, unclued in. And so I drove her to her first marathon in the Napa Valley. And I watched her get ready. I watched all these people doing their thing. And I went to the dinner before, the high carb dinner that they do beforehand. And I listened to all these stories. It was inspiring, to say the least. And then I watched them coming in. And it was, what's the word? Inspiring is an overused word, but for this particular thing, it was truly inspiring. And I watched, they were not all young people. A lot of them were plump, middle-aged people. And I saw that and I said, I'm kind of plump too. Been doing nothing but teaching and sitting at the desk for years now. And it was just like a little impetus, a little kick to see how far I could push that limit. And then the next year I did.
And you started training.
That same year, I think I started training. Like I said, I made charts and made grids and stuff. And I backwards engineered it. And I did all this totally on my own because, like I said, I didn't have a minute to myself. I didn't have internet at the house or anything to explore or anything. So alone in my little room, I backward engineered. Okay, it's 26.2 miles. I would have to get to which point by which week. And I backwards engineered it. I made myself a running schedule. And later on, I discovered that this has already been done.
Yeah, it has a few times.
I know. And I found, books and books about this. I didn't know any of that stuff. I didn't have time to go to bookstores. I didn't have time for anything. So I made my own schedule and my own charts and everything. And I did my
What was your first marathon?
California International here in Sacramento. Mm-hmm. And it's the perfect one to start one because it's, aside from a few little rolling hills at the beginning, it's all downhill. It's all downhill. It goes from upriver in Folsom, downriver, all the way to the Capital in Sacramento. You go through 5 cities. It's an amazing marathon, yeah. So I have Stacia to thank for that, for having pushed the envelope more and more and more like that. I just kept watching her. She had so much fun doing it. And it was just such an upper. And I needed uppers back then. I really did. I had a natural one. Yeah, yes, exactly. I had none in my life at that point, except music.
This was post-divorce?
Yes, the divorce happened in early June or late May, and in July he died.
Of what year?
2004. 2004. So a month later he died, a massive heart attack.
Ooh.
And so nobody ever mentioned that D word, divorce. Nobody in either family ever mentioned that D word. And I was just a widow. It was too fresh. It was too new. It was just very bizarre.
Oh, so they didn't know you were divorced.
They knew. No. They knew, but everybody just ignored that 1 month interlude. They just ignored that part, and I was still part of the family and everything. And it's been wonderful. I don't mean wonderful that it's been. I wasn't divorced from the whole family.
Got it.
Just from him.
Yeah.
And they always kept me around as
that's nice. That's how I understood that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because I live here among the Honnold family, but my family is all back east. Mm-hmm. And so it would have been very lonely. It would have been very empty.
And then climbing, which to me, because when we were first conversing via email, you said, and this was before your surgery too, you said, yeah, come on down and we'll go climbing. And I thought, I've never been climbing before. And
Maybe not.
I have no desire to. But,
well, I thought, well, no, that's not true. Well, I was about to say I didn't either, but I was when I was a little kid, I climbed, trees and garage roofs and stuff and with all the other little kids.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I even did that.
Oh, okay.
But I just felt like, let's just put like Alex Honnold's mom aside. Let's put that label aside. When a woman who is older says, let's go climbing, that's an inspiration to me. Like older than me, someone older than me, not just like quote unquote older. I'm just saying somebody who's older than me.
Invite you to go climb.
who is doing something that's more adventurous than me. I think, why should I say no to that? Like, I can't say no to that because,
good for you.
Good for you. There's no excuse. There is no excuse.
That's one of those limits that we accept. Yeah, that's what I meant before when I said you have. The only limits are the ones you accept. Mm-hmm. Buy into it.
Right, and I think that's why these stories are so important.
Yes,
because
I agree.
For someone of any age, I don't care if you, the listener, are 35 or if you're 75
or 16. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
We accept limits at any age.
Right. I think it's important to hear what other people are doing, other women are doing specifically, because we get told so often the things that we can't do or shouldn't do. We get told those limits. But if you hear these stories, then you think, oh gosh, like climbing was never on my radar, but hey,
it was never on mine either.
Yeah, exactly. So
how I got into it?
Yeah. What made you decide to just go ahead and take that, like literally the first step?
Well, my son was, at that point, I started climbing 10 years ago, and he was already beginning to be well known. I would get magazines that, he still lived here at home, and we would get magazines with him in an article, or even a little bit later with him on the cover. And so I remember thinking, whoa, he must be pretty good.
You didn't realize that he was a big deal in that world.
I had no idea what climbing entailed. I had no idea what they did when they went on a climbing trip. It was just words to me. And he would come home and say, oh, we went out to the Owens River Gorge and I did a 10B and 11A, and I had no clue what that meant. And I wanted to be part of his life. I wanted to be able to celebrate with him, or if that was a good thing, or console him if that wasn't a good thing. I didn't even know if it was good or bad. So he was here, I guess it was, Christmas of 2008. He had an injured arm. He was nursing something in his arm. So he couldn't climb, but he could belay. The belayer is the one who stands on the ground and manages the rope and catches you if you fall. Sees the rope goes through a belay device, and you lock it off so that the climber doesn't fall.
Hopefully,
if you're paying attention. And so he was home, couldn't climb. I knew he went to the climbing gym all the time here, and so I said, "Well, Alex, why don't you take me to the climbing gym and just show me the ropes, as it were. Just show me what you do, how what things are called." Because he would tell me about all these things he used and what they did it with, and I had no idea what any of this meant. So I figured I'd go to the gym with him that one day, and he'd show me how to tie in onto my harness and how to manage the rope, and I'd do a half a climb, and I'd go home happy. And I'd be a little more knowledgeable about his life. And my daughter's also a climber. She also does this, but that's not her sport of choice. But she's very good at it, better than me. So I went with him, and I again, quote unquote, knew. I grew up in New York. I've been up many, many, many skyscrapers, big, tall buildings. And I know that, I get a little queasy when I'm at the edge or even behind a window. If it's just a window.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. Even if there's a bar there to hold it. I grab that bar and I can look, but I get queasy. So I knew, quote unquote, that I was afraid of heights. What I didn't know at that point was that most people, everybody is afraid of, quote unquote, heights. But what they're afraid of is not the height part. They're afraid of falling off that height. Once you put a rope on and you can't fall, that just goes away. That was totally unexpected. I expected, like I said, to, go up a half a wall and be done with it. And then I'd know the terms for things and I'd know what he was talking about. So I got on my first climb and he showed me everything, how to do it. And he was belaying, and I knew I had the strongest belayer in the world. People were writing articles about him. And I went up to I got to the top, very top, 40 feet up on my first climb. And I remember thinking, I shouldn't be able to look down because I'll be afraid. I turned around and looked down, waved and smiled, waved at Alex. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I just loved it.
But you can fall.
You fall, but a few feet, and you dangle on the rope.
You won't fall to the ground.
Right.
So those who are...
I'm sorry, the rope, it goes from the climber up to a bobbin at the very top, wraps around the bobbin twice for a little grip, and then comes down to your belayer.
So the people who are dying climbing, are they dying free soloing?
Oh, well, no, there's a lot of things out in the outdoors that can go wrong. It's not a...
You're talking about specifically in a gym.
talking about climbing in a gym.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. Some of them free solo. Some of them, sometimes the rope gets cut by a rock falling off. Sometimes somebody does something stupid, and sometimes there are all kinds of accidents that can happen outdoors. Yeah, that's different. But in a gym, nothing can happen. I mean, no, that's not true. In a gym, you can either be top roping, which means what I just described, the ropes wrapped around the bobbin, you go up, and the belayer takes up the slack as you climb, so that if you fall off the wall, you just hang right there. You just dangle, because your belayer has locked off the rope. So I knew this. So nothing can happen. Well, nothing can happen. So that fear, that queasiness in the gut, that goes away because you know that you can't fall.
Right.
Once you start lead climbing, remember what I said about lead climbing? Mm-hmm. The sharp end? When you're climbing on the sharp end, things can happen because there's no bobbin up above you. There's nothing above you.
I see.
Until you put the protection in, there's nothing. So that's why it's more dangerous for the lead climbers. So, yeah, that's how I started. I got to the top. And so that day, instead of my climbing half a wall and coming home happy, I climbed 12 total walls, which is very unusual, and loved it. And that's how I started.
And so how many years ago was that?
10.
Okay. And did you climb El Cap after Alex free soloed it?
Yes, a few months later. Yes,
he brought you up there.
He free soloed in June 3rd, and I did my climb with him on Halloween Day, 31st of October, same year.
What was that like for you?
How much time do we have? That's a whole book's worth of reply. It was amazing. It was
terrifying.
It was terrifying. It was outrageous.
You did that in a day, didn't you?
Yes.
Is that right? And
yes.
Most
climbers who climb El Cap take from 4 days to 2 weeks. I mean, you could do it as slow as you want, but 4 days is the normal.
So how does someone do it in 4 days? Is that they're sleeping?
They sleep on those portaledge. They attach a portaledge to the rock, and they sleep up there. They camp up there. So normal for the route that we chose. There are over 100 routes that go up El Cap. El Cap is like 1.5 miles wide.
And so I didn't realize that.
I know. It's a long walk across the top once you get to the top. And so we chose a route that was a little bit shorter because the hike up goes way up high, And
that's off to the left.
It's off to the left.
Is that right? Okay. Mm-hmm. For anyone who's seen the movie, I'm sure that they can imagine
if you're picturing,
wall.
If you're picturing the big wall, it's way over to the left side. And the descent is way over to the right side. So we had to cross the whole top to get to the descent.
How do you descend?
The descent is, everybody who goes up El Cap comes down the same way. The descent, they call it the descent ledges and the descent ropes. It's a series of ledges that kind of wind their way down from the top.
It's not a shuttle bus.
No. You can't call it a Lyft or an Uber. Yeah.
Or a helicopter.
Or a helicopter. But it's very scary ledges, and it's not what you would call walking or hiking. It's scrambling over rocks, over trees, over boulders. There's a lot of spots.
And you're roped in?
No.
Oh, you're not.
You can't be roped in. No, you can't be roped in to do that. No. That was the hard. Yeah, the descent was harder for me mentally harder for me than the climb.
Were you in the dark at that point?
Yes, it was pitch dark. Yeah.
Because you started out just at the break of dawn,
5:30,
day, right?
Yeah, 5:30 in the morning. And then after you finish the descent ledges, then there are 6 fixed ropes that you have to rappel down in the dark. We did it. And then there's another hour and a half hiking through the woods, and it was exhausting. But most people take 4 days. We did it in 19 hours.
Would you have been able to do that with anyone other than Alex? Like, I know he's known for his speed. Was it just because of his being so adept and fast that you could do it? Or is it just a matter of pushing yourself, and the people who are doing it in 4 days, just are taking their time.
Well, they're taking their time in order to be safe. And Alex has already worked on all of that so hard and so long that he knows how to be safe really fast, you know? And there are other people
and
out there.
And you can just follow his lead.
Yeah. Well, see, I didn't climb on the rock. I climbed the rope. There are gizmos, gadgets, called ascenders that, you know, they have teeth in them. They grip the rope and you slide them up or push them up. It's not sliding. Right. It's harder work than climbing. It's harder physical work than climbing because you're pushing those darn things 3,000 feet and stepping up, climbing up on the things attached to them and the tethers. And it's hard to explain without a visual. But,
I get a better picture.
But it's a harder thing physically for your body than climbing. Well, I hesitate to say harder. It's harder physically. Yes. It uses different muscles, different parts of your body than climbing. Climbing is more technical. This is more physical. And so he lead climbed. Remember the difference?
Yeah,
he was the first climber. There were 3 of us that day. He was the first climber. Then he would attach my rope. He had 2 ropes. He would attach my rope. They call that jugging. The gadgets are called jumars. The ascenders are called jumars. And for short, they call it jugging on the rope. So I jugged all of El Cap. And so he would attach my jugging rope. I would clip on, start jugging up, completely vertical, completely straight, you know, plumb line. And the other person, Sam Crossley, a good friend of Alex, is also a climber, also a photographer. He would clean the climb because Alex would put in gear. It had to be pulled out. So he could reuse it.
Okay.
So the other guy, Sam, he would climb exactly where Alex went and pull out all the gear. That is way too hard for me to do. Way too hard. It's very, very hard. Very technical, and you have to be strong, and you have to know what you're doing. And I was not strong, and I didn't know what I was doing.
Well, you had to have had some body
I was strong.
Strength,
yeah. I'm strong. I'm stronger than I've ever been in my life. You know, but these guys are amazing. Amazing. So I jugged up the whole way. And what was it like? You say, well, gonna have to read the book. It was amazing. It was terrifying in spots. It was a test at every step. Is
that in the new book, by the way? Or is it in the future book?
The new book.
Well, you said you have to read the book.
Oh, the existing book. Yeah. The one that's coming out in May.
Yeah. Is it in that?
The Sharp End. Yeah.
Okay.
The Sharp End of Life. Yeah. Yeah. The book begins and ends on El Cap, and the rest is all the stuff that came
all the good stuff.
Yeah. All the backstory.
The backstory, not just the good stuff. Yeah. Right. It's all the peanut butter, all the filler.
So it was a learning experience at every pitch. You know, pitch is the rope length as far as you go. Each time that's called a pitch. And each pitch was a learning experience for different things. There were parts of it where I had to traverse. Traversing is when the lead climber has gone up above you, but to one side. Now that plumb line that I'm on isn't vertical anymore.
Right.
So you have to make it vertical. If you just get on the rope, you're going to swing like a pendulum way out into space and then go splat against the rock, which is not.
And find your footing and your handhold and everything else probably.
It's just a swing at that point.
Oh, okay.
There's no footing and handhold. You're out in space swinging, and then you come splat against the rock. Or you swing sideways and hit every little bump on your way and break your elbows and break your knees. So to avoid that, I had to learn how to lower out slowly, sideways. Well, he showed me how to do it in my garage once. And then one friend, while I was training for this, I trained for 17 weeks to do this. And one of my friends, who was a good climber, he showed me how to do it on the rock once. That was my entire experience with lowering out. So I had to learn that as I went. And it was pretty scary. But
you did it.
But I did it. And those 17 weeks when I trained, I had gotten so used to being up. I mean, the first time I went out there to train for this, I was alone. Because when you're jugging, it's just you going up the rope. Nobody can help you, So I went out there by myself. And there are fixed ropes. Do you remember the heart carved into the side of El Cap, that heart-shaped thing? Mm-hmm. That sits, the point of it, the bottom point of that heart is at 1,000 feet. And there are fixed ropes coming down from that. And they use that to transport all their stuff, their portal edges, and to carry things up. And I used it to train. And the first time I got on that, that was probably the biggest learning jump in the whole process. Because, I went from trying it out trying the Jumars on the ropes and getting the motion. I just tried it at the gym a few times. And, you're 10 feet off the floor and there's a lot of people around it's no big deal. It's a big deal muscle-wise. It's hard work. First time I tried it for like 20 minutes and I was sore for a week. And so I had a long way to go for those 17 weeks of training. It was intense training. And the first time I got on the rope there, I was like, oh my, I'm on El Cap. I went about 10 feet and then said, okay, I went back down. And switching from going up to going down is hard. It's very technical. You have to know what you're doing. If you don't, you could die. You could fall and die. So I spent an inordinate amount of time up there thinking things through because you have so much to learn to do that stuff. And you know that if you don't do it right, bad things can happen. So I went up 10 feet and came back down. And then, okay, I'm going to do this. I went up another 25 feet.
This is the same day?
Same day, yeah. Same hour, 2 hours, whatever it took. And I finally did the first pitch of those 6 pitches. To Alex, this is child's play. He told me to stop on the way out of the valley that weekend and just try the heart lines. They're called the heart lines, the 6 lines. And so he just expected me to drive up, hike in. It's a half-hour hike in, and just go up 1,000 feet like it's nothing. I got up one of the pitches, and I was very proud of myself.
So is that normally how it works? Is that you go and you do a little bit, and then you come back down, and then you do a little bit more, and you come back down, and so you're kind of mastering the 10 feet, and then the 20 feet, and then the 30
Well, when you
feet.
say how it works, what are you talking about?
Climbing in general.
This is how training yourself works.
Okay.
That was me making friends with the whole terrifying environment. I mean, you're on this piece of vertical rock. The trees look like little broccoli florets way down below you. The birds are wheeling around below you. It's like terrifying. It's everybody's worst nightmare.
So typically when let's say someone is going to climb it, I don't know if you can even answer this question, but typically if someone's going to climb El Cap or any other wall, are they doing it in segments like that? Or do they go out, or does it just depend on
they do it by pitch. The lead climber will climb to a particular point, whether there's already a bolt in the rock, or maybe he puts 3 of his own things in the rock to make an anchor. And then he says, okay, climb on, and the second person can start climbing. And he pulls up the slack as the second person comes up and joins him. That's usually how it works. So number 1 climber goes up, makes an anchor, tells the second climber it's safe to climb. He ties in, climbs up, while the first climber pulls up the slack so in case he falls. Then they stop at the anchor point. And often, maybe most times, they'll switch leads.
Mm-hmm, to give a person a
Person
break.
A will lead this one, then they join each other. Person B leads the next one. Give them a break. Or, it's up to them. It's up to the climbers who wants to lead which pitch.
Okay.
But no, they usually go by pitch. It's you leapfrog.
Mm-hmm.
You leapfrog up the wall, basically.
Okay.
Unless you're like Tommy and Alex when they do speed climbs up El Cap, they'll leapfrog 10 pitches. Alex will just lead, keep going as long as he can. They'll stop. And then Tommy will take over in the next half hour or whatever, So, but it's usually leapfrogging, pitch by pitch.
Mm-hmm. And then depending on their abilities, a climber may do a section and just come back down like you did. Like they may do an entire pitch and then come back down, and maybe another weekend go and then master the second one.
That's called top roping. Top roping is when you go up 1 pitch and then come back down. Then maybe all your friends want to do the same pitch. You all work on the same pitch.
I see. Okay.
And you have fun on that pitch. Then you pull the rope and pull the gear and go do another pitch somewhere else. That's called top roping. You put the rope up on top. You use it. Everybody uses it. And then you go home. Top roping. And that's what you do basically in the gym. It's called top roping.
Okay. Thanks for that.
Yeah. So climbing goes somewhere. Top roping doesn't. Just goes up 1 rope length and comes back down.
Okay. I read an article. You were very kind. You sent me some great articles that I will link to in the show notes. But you sent me an article and something stood out for me. And you had said you had moments of self-doubt. And it was my quote here that I have written down was, "You're too old for this. You don't belong out here with all these young guys. You're all alone. What if something happens?" How do you overcome those moments of self-doubt?
Yeah, that was that first day of training. I didn't know how to get where I was going. I didn't know where the the fixed lines were. I'd never been out there before. And so I asked if you ever go out to El Cap, there's nothing but young, brawny guys, walking around with packs the size of refrigerators on their back. And then it was me, Mom, with a little day pack. So, yeah, I watched these guys, and they showed me how to get there, and followed 2 of them to the first rope. And I watched them get on the first rope. They were continuing up, though. They weren't coming back down. So I let them go, and they went first. And I watched them go up, and I'm thinking, what are you doing here? You're old enough to be his grandmother. And it was true. And then I thought, well, if I go home, I will never have done this. And I want to do it, darn it. I want to see what it's like to be up there. How badly did I want to see it? Well, I'll try the first 10 feet. That's why I went up and down that day. I'll try the first 10 feet. If I feel like I actually do know what I'm doing enough, I'll go up another 20 feet, and I did that. And I got up like the first rope is almost 200 feet high, long. You can't really see the other end. And I got up about 100 feet on that one, and talking to myself the whole way like this, thinking, okay, if anything happened here, what would I do? Okay, and to make matters worse, there was a knot in the first rope. Well, when your things are attached to the rope, how do you get past a knot? I had to figure that out. I didn't know the knot was there until I got to it. You couldn't really see it. It was way high. And so I got past the first knot, about 100 feet. And all of a sudden, I hear this voice, saying something non-whatever, just like, are we having fun yet? This male voice out of nowhere scared the bejeebers out of me. I turned around, and there was this big rock formation to my right that I hadn't even noticed. I was so focused, and there was a guy reclining on top of it, belaying his partner up. Scared the heck out of me. And so I recovered from that shock, and we chatted for a while, like over a back fence. I was climbing, he was climbing. We were, friends. Climbing is a wonderful, close community. And so we chatted for a while, and that took my mind off it. And the fact that he was there, and that took my mind off it, such that I was able to talk myself into doing the rest, to get the whole first pitch done. I didn't, until that point, I was not at all sure I was going to do that whole first pitch.
So you knew that you wanted it badly enough.
I wanted it. I wanted to be part of Alex's life pretty badly. I wanted to know what he was talking about. I was getting a little inkling. Each inch up the rope that I went, I was getting a little more inkling what he needs to know. What he needs to know is phenomenal. I had no clue. So much you have to know about physics, about torque, about just so much stuff. And every inch of the way I was learning stuff. I'm thinking, maybe. And then I chatted with this guy for a few minutes, and it wasn't so scary after that.
Do you think part of it was that he just, and I have no idea, but he just treated you like a person? Like you said, the community is really great.
He just accepted my presence on that rope as totally normal. And then it became normal. Yeah.
It wasn't you saying...
It wasn't only me thinking...
I'm too old.
All those things. Right, yeah. Right. This is crazy. Something would happen. Nobody would know where I am. Why am... And then it didn't faze him in the slightest that this old lady was hanging on the rope next to him.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't faze him in the slightest. And I'm thinking, okay. Well, it won't faze me either then. And I finished that first pitch. But when I got to the top of the first pitch, I clipped into the bolts, first row of bolts. I had enough for the first time, out. If I hadn't been alone, it might have gone very differently. But I was on my way home. I was alone, and Alex had said, just go up to the heart. It's only 1,000 feet. So if I hadn't been alone, I might have continued up that day. Maybe not, though. I don't know. But that was enough for that one day.
Yeah.
It was really scary.
Yeah. But that's great. Another thing that you had said in one of these articles was that your senior brain was insistent. And that struck me that yes, there's probably some truth in that, but everyone has a, fill in the blank brain that's insistent. Right. Whether I'm too big or too fat to do X,
or too young, or the wrong gender, or whatever.
I don't have the lungs to be a runner.
Right.
Whatever it is, we all have those stories, and it's just a matter of
but the reason I called it then my senior brain was all the feedback I was getting. At work, I'd go to work and teach at the college and talk with my colleagues and tell them what I did that weekend, and they were like, "Are you crazy? what are you doing out there? You know, like, this is so unheard of. And it was to them, you know. But so the only feedback I got was negative. But I would look at them and say, do I want my life to be like theirs? You know, the highlight of their week was shopping. The highlight of their week was going to the bar or whatever, you know, hanging out with their friends. That's all well and good, but do I want that to be my whole life? And I sure as heck didn't. So I just learned to discount all that stuff. I mean, I had gotten that stuff when I was a kid, too. I was a girl. I wasn't supposed to go to college. I didn't need college. Some man was going to take care of me, and, you know, I'd have babies, and that would be that. And I never believed that either.
So did you feel like a bit in terms of you never did?
I never did. Just like when I was a kid, I never bought into all that stuff. No.
So you rejected that. You knew there was something different for you.
Yeah, I knew.
Was your dad around?
Yeah, he was the typical, not absent father, but
checked out.
He was the father. He'd come home from work and read his paper, and he tinkered in the basement, and, you know, my father. Yeah, he was the typical after the war dad, you know. There were dad's roles and there were mom's roles, and I didn't buy into all the mom's roles back then. I knew that was not for me. Not the mom part, but the role part. Sewing curtains and finding bargains at the stores, that was not my life. I knew that when I was 5, you know.
And you had identified this as your coworkers.
Yeah.
And you thought, I've already looked at that life. That life is not for me.
More or less. I mean, they had interesting lives too, and they go do fun stuff too, but not as fun as this.
Yeah, I understand. Right, I understand. And everybody, like,
I don't mean to put down their choices
totally
at all.
Get it. Yeah, totally get it. That you just
but
wanted
there's so much
different.
More. There's so much more.
But I think the problem with that is that when we do something that's a little bit out of the norm, we get that pushback.
Yes.
That people don't want to face it themselves or face the possibility that they should be doing something different.
And I find that most people live in fear. And I grew up that way too. My aunt upstairs and my parents, my everybody, they were fearful of everything. And I wasn't. When I was, 3 and 4, and I didn't want to be like them, you know. I didn't want to be afraid of everything. But there was nothing else. You know, so I retreated. I was quiet. I learned the piano. I learned to paint. I learned, languages. And until like the middle of my life, I was very quiet and withdrawn, and that was my life. But I was forming.
And you busted out in a big way.
Busted out. There's just so much more to life, and it's such a shame to just be so afraid of things.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, my colleagues were afraid for me. You know, they didn't want anything to happen for me, but they were afraid because they didn't know it. I didn't risk my life out there. Not at all. Mm-hmm. I would never.
Right. You were educated in what you were doing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
What's next for you beyond the book?
Well, there are a lot of places on the planet that I want to go climb.
Like where?
Well, I have climbed in Mexico several times. I've climbed in Greece a few times. And I've climbed in Canada and here and there. But I'd like to go back to Mexico. I'd love to go back to Greece. I'd love to climb in China. There's so much interesting stuff. I would like to climb in the Dolomites in Italy, in France, of course, the Alps and other places. There's just so many rocks, interesting rocks all over the world. I'll never be a very, very good climber, and I know this. I just don't have the strength. I just don't have what it takes, and I'm not about to give up all the rest of my life to train, because piano is still very important to me, and art is still very important to me, and languages will always be it. So I'm always going to be, what do they call it, a lifestyle climber. Not what do they call it, lifestyle, or I can't remember the
professional or
not professional. There's another term. Alex is the other. I'm the lifestyle climber.
Yeah, well, he's definitely a professional.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Making his living from that. Absolutely.
So that's figures large on the next 5 years. I mean, I'm not getting any younger. You know, I want to keep climbing, and I will probably always climb easy stuff. Always, But
beautiful.
But beautiful. I want to go back to the Gunks. The Gunks are the prime climbing destination north of New York City, about 2 hours, next to the Catskills, the Shawangunk Mountains. They call them the Gunks. And I can't wait to go back there. That's great climbing. I love it. And it's my kind of climbing. I really enjoy it. So, yeah, all kinds of climbing I want to go do. And all kinds of linguistic things I want to accomplish. I'd love to go live for, 6 months, a year whatever in Poland. And, my family was Polish. And my grandparents, all four, were from Poland. And maybe teach English there for a while and climb while I'm there. I'd love to go back to conducting. I don't know that will ever happen because the opportunities to conduct an orchestra are few and far between.
You got to make your own, like you
got to make your own or be trained for it. And I'm not trained for it.
Mm-hmm.
My training was all, what do they call that? Autodidact? Self-taught.
Yeah, self-taught.
Self-taught. Autodidact in French.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, self-taught. And so that doesn't count for anybody's requirements. So I would love to conduct it, but I'd love to go back to playing in an orchestra. But that's a big time commitment, and I haven't been able to do that. And I want to get a lot of more books published. I have novels ready to go, but I've been too busy.
Yeah.
So now I have, a publisher. I have an agent. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah, great. I like to wrap up these conversations by asking my guests, what does it mean to you to be bold?
To not believe all the naysayers, basically. Whether you're 5 or 10 or 60. I mean, I climbed El Cap when I was 66. That's significant.
That is significant.
Yeah, I climbed El Cap when I was 66. I was 66 while I was training for. No, I was 65 while I was training for it, and I climbed it when I was 66. And I started climbing when I was 56 or 57, something like that. So age is just a number. It's what you believe. That's the most important. Don't buy into the naysayers. That's what it means really in this world, in this life, to be bold. Those people they call bold are the ones who did not buy into the naysayers.
What's your goal age? How old were you?
To live to?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, at least 125. I mean, just
great, 125.
Yeah, to get done some of the things I want to get done. I mean, I long to get back to painting. I haven't been able to set up my painting in this house because we had kids and we had a dog and I had 19 jobs and I haven't been able to. But I'd like to get back to that. It's painting and piano are immensely therapeutic, centering, focusing. It's kind of like rock climbing. Piano and rock climbing are alike in that they get you 100% focused. You cannot think about anything else while you're doing them.
Mm-hmm. You're in the flow.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. And the instant that flow goes away, you start hitting wrong notes or you fall off the rock and, Yeah. So, and painting also does that for me. I used to lose hours and hours painting and then I'd look and, oh my goodness, it's dinner time. That's what we all long for, is that kind of focus.
Your book comes out in May.
Yes.
The Sharp End of Life. And your website is?
DeirdreW.us.
Okay.
DeirdreW.us. That's not exactly a website. It's my blog.
Okay. And I will link to that in the show notes so people can.
Yeah, the website, they should go to the book website.
And that's the sharpendoflife.com.
I believe so.
Okay. In any case, I will link to it.
Yes.
We'll make sure that we find it
yes.
there. So thank you so much for having me here. It's just been delightful
you for having
to chat.
me on the program.
Yes. It's just great to see the IMAX film with you next to me too. And it's just wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. She's pretty cool, isn't she? In many ways, you can see where Alex got his penchant for being so methodical. And really, without that, the world would not have had such an accomplished athlete. And the truth is, we may never see anyone like Alex again. So thank you, Deirdre, for all that you did and played a part in that. But really, her story and her life goals are so inspirational to me. It's a reminder to just keep going. Don't slow down. Don't stop. Because there are so many things to embrace and accomplish in this one short lifetime. Don't forget her book, The Sharp End of Life. It comes out in May, and you can pre-order that book on Amazon right now, and I'll link to that in the show notes for you. A reminder that this month you can win a pair of Bluetooth headphones from Jaybird, and that's the month of March. All you need to do is email me at beth@shesboldpodcast.com and tell me your 3 favorite episodes of the She's Bold podcast. You'll get an extra entry if you're subscribed to the She's Bold podcast newsletter, which announces each new episode. You can find a link to how to enter in the show notes and at shesboldpodcast.com/Jaybird. For links to all the things we chatted about in this episode, go to shesboldpodcast.com, and there you will find the show notes for this and all episodes. You can also find those links and show notes in whatever podcast app it is that you use to listen to this. While you're there on the website, don't forget to check out my Patreon page. It's basically a way for you to say, yes, I like what I'm hearing on the She's Bold podcast, and I'm willing to support the show and get some special benefits. Those benefits, you get special written and audio content. Oftentimes it's a bonus question that I ask guests. You can find out more by going to shesboldpodcast.com/Patreon. You can connect with me by friending me on Facebook, and I'm WanderGal on Instagram. Ladies, you can join the Be Bold Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/BeBoldGroup. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. Until next time, be bold.